They told me my dreams were nothing more than childish fantasies. At family dinners, my father smirked, my mother sighed, my brother laughed as if I were performing a comedy show. I swallowed the shame, hiding sketches of algorithms in a notebook only I believed in. But the more they cut me down, the deeper the fire burned. One night, my mother's voice echoed, "We're cutting you off completely." At that exact moment, my phone buzzed. "Ms. Carter, your company just went public, $220 million. Their faces froze. I smiled, finally free. The dining room shimmered with the soft glow of crystal chandeliers. Silver cutlery clinked against porcelain plates, and the table stretched like a polished runway lined with wine glasses filled to the brim. My father sat at the head of the table, his tie perfectly knotted, his face arranged into the practiced smile he wore whenever guests came. My mother beamed beside him, a pearl necklace resting proudly at her throat. Lucas, my older brother, leaned back in his chair with a glass of Merlot, telling stories about his latest promotion at the firm. Laughter rose and fell like waves, synchronized, rehearsed, artificial. I sat quietly at the far end, the only one without something grand to announce. To them, I was still the awkward girl who buried herself in books instead of chasing boys, the one who scribbled lines of code on napkins while others planned vacations. 35 years old, a PhD in computer science, and still they looked at me with eyes that said, "Poor Evelyn, still chasing clouds." "Evelyn," my father said between sips, "Lucas just made partner. Isn't that wonderful?" I smiled politely. "Yes, it's impressive." Lucas smirked. "And what about you, little sister? Still tinkering with your robots?" "They're not robots," I corrected softly. "I'm working on an AI model for healthcare, one that could analyze patient data faster than any physician. It could save lives!" He burst into laughter, spilling a drop of wine onto the white linen. My mother sighed, pressing her napkin to her lips to hide a smile. My father chuckled as though Lucas had delivered a punchline. "Evelyn, darling," my father said, shaking his head, "you dream too much. Technology is fine, but do you really think investors will pour money into some fantasy of yours? Be practical, like your brother." Their laughter echoed long after it stopped. My fork hovered above my plate, my appetite gone. Inside, my chest burned. I wanted to scream that I wasn't some child fantasizing about fairy tales. I wanted to tell them I had data, prototypes, a plan, but the words died in my throat. That was the first crack in the illusion. The golden cage of family dinners that promised belonging, but delivered only humiliation. As the evening wore on, Lucas pulled out his phone, showing off photos of his new office with a view of the city skyline. My parents' eyes sparkled with pride. Then my mother turned to me with a mock frown. "And you, Evelyn? Still at that tiny lab of yours?" "It's not tiny," I whispered. "We're developing something groundbreaking." "Groundbreaking," Lucas repeated with a grin. "Maybe you'll cure headaches from staring at screens too long." My father chuckled again. "Evelyn, don't take it so seriously. We're only teasing." But it wasn't teasing. It was a blade, sharpened over years of comparisons, always angled at me. I forced a smile, though my hands trembled under the tablecloth. Then my mother leaned closer, lowering her voice as if offering comfort. "Don't worry, sweetheart. Someday, when the time is right, we'll help you. You'll see." Her hand brushed my shoulder gently, almost tenderly. For a fleeting second, I believed her. I clung to that fragile thread of hope, telling myself that maybe, just maybe, they would stand behind me one day. The dinner ended with applause for Lucas's success and a toast to his future. I carried my plate to the kitchen, the warmth of my mother's promise still glowing faintly in my chest. But as I passed through the hallway, voices drifted from the study. "Of course we'll support you, Lucas," my mother was saying. "Here's the check. Use it wisely." My steps froze. I peered through the half-open door. My mother pressed an envelope into Lucas's hand, her smile proud and unwavering. My breath caught. That money. It was the same promise she had given me, whispered over countless nights when I begged for a chance. When the time is right, Evelyn, I'll help you. I staggered back, clutching the wall for balance. The golden cage cracked wider, exposing rust beneath the gilded bars. They had never believed in me. Their love was conditional, their support selective. Lucas glanced up, his eyes meeting mine. For a brief moment, there was no laughter, no teasing, just a cold, victorious gleam. He closed the door with a firm click, shutting me out entirely. In that silence, my heart pounded. The fire inside me flared, but so did the ache of betrayal. I had wanted a family's love, not their mockery. I had wanted encouragement, not condescension. As I stood alone in that hallway, I realized the truth that would shape everything to come. My family wasn't my safety net. They were the weight tied to my ankles, daring me to sink. And somewhere deep inside, a voice whispered, "Let them laugh. One day, you'll silence them without saying a word." The announcement came on an ordinary Sunday morning, disguised in the soft clatter of coffee cups and the rustle of the newspaper. My father folded the pages neatly and looked at me with that mix of pity and firmness he reserved for unpleasant duties. "Evelyn," he began, "we've decided we can't support you anymore. It's time you stood on your own 2 feet." The words sank like stones into my chest. My mother nodded, her pearl earrings swaying. "It's for your own good, sweetheart. We've carried you long enough?" Carried me? The irony was almost laughable. I had never been carried. I had been tolerated, humored, but never truly supported. My lips parted to protest, to remind them of the promises, the endless reassurances, but the lump in my throat refused to let sound escape. Lucas swirled his wine, his grin sharp. "Don't take it so hard, sis. Independence builds character." His voice dripped with condescension, as though he were gifting me wisdom from atop his throne. I forced my shoulders straight, my voice steady though my insides trembled. "Fine," I said. "If that's how it is, I'll manage on my own." They returned to their meal as if nothing monumental had just been said, as if cutting me off was no more serious than turning down a dessert. But inside, the ground shifted. I felt the cage door slam shut, locking me in darkness. That night, I sat in my apartment, staring at the ceiling. The hum of the refrigerator filled the silence, a lonely metronome marking the seconds of my isolation. Every beat whispered the same truth. "You are alone now." When my laptop chimed with a new email, I almost ignored it, but the subject line made my stomach twist. Funding proposal from Evelyn Carter. I hadn't sent it. My hands trembled as I opened the message. It was a detailed pitch, my words, my diagrams, circulated to investors with my name boldly signed at the bottom. But it wasn't mine. The bile rose in my throat. Who could have? But I already knew. The next morning confirmed it. Rumors swirled in the lab, colleagues whispering, eyes flicking toward me with suspicion. By noon, I was summoned to the director's office. He held up a printed copy of the email, his expression grim. "Evelyn, this has your name on it. Investors are furious. They say you're shopping your project without proper clearance." My protest spilled out in a rush. "I never sent this. Someone used my name." But the words felt flimsy in the heavy air of the office. The director's eyes, once kind, now brimmed with doubt. "You need to fix this, or your position here will be in jeopardy." When I stepped outside, the winter air bit into my skin. My lungs tightened. My career, my credibility, everything I had worked for was dangling by a thread, and the scissors were in Lucas's hand. That evening, I confronted my parents. "Lucas forged my name. He's the one sending those proposals. He's stealing my work." My father's jaw tightened, but he looked away. My mother sighed, folding her arms. "Evelyn, must you always turn everything into a drama? Lucas only wants what's best for the family." My heart stuttered. "You knew." Silence. A silence louder than denial, heavier than confession. Lucas appeared in the doorway, his smirk unrepentant. "Business is war, sis. Don't take it personally." Something inside me cracked. I wanted to shout, to claw, to expose him. Instead, I fled. That night, I sat on the cold bench of a train station, the screech of brakes echoing around me. Passengers bustled past, their lives moving forward while mine unraveled. I buried my face in my hands, hot tears spilling between my fingers. Maybe I really am useless, I whispered to no one. The words tasted like ash. The minutes dragged, my breath fogged in the frigid air. For the first time, I wondered if giving up might be easier than fighting a war I seemed destined to lose. Then my phone vibrated. I blinked through the tears, staring at the glowing screen, a number I didn't recognize. I hesitated, thumb hovering over the decline button. But some instinct, faint and fragile, urged me to answer. "Miss Carter?" A voice, calm and measured, filled my ear. "I've been following your work. I think it's time we talked." The train roared past, wind whipping my hair across my face, but I barely noticed. My heart pounded, a flicker of light breaking through the suffocating dark. The call came late at night, when the city outside my window was wrapped in silence. I answered with a shaky voice, expecting another accusation, another reminder of how far I had fallen. Instead, the stranger introduced himself as Daniel Hayes, an investor with an eye on emerging technologies. "I've seen your research," he said, "but more importantly, I've seen documents that suggest your brother has been selling your ideas to a rival firm. Evelyn, he's taking credit for work that doesn't belong to him." The world tilted beneath me. My hand clenched around the phone. "Are you certain?" "Certain enough to warn you. Check the filings. He's positioning himself as founder of a healthcare AI startup. Your algorithms are in his deck, line for line." After the call ended, I sat in the dark, staring at the city lights. My chest tightened with disbelief, then rage. Lucas had always mocked me, but to strip me bare like this, to hand my work to strangers, it was betrayal carved deeper than I thought possible. The next evening, I confronted my parents. My father leaned against the fireplace, swirling his drink. My mother folded her arms, her eyes cool. "Lucas is doing what he must," she said. "This is for the good of the family." My voice cracked. "He's stealing from me. He's taking my name, my years of work, my life. And you're defending him?" "Don't be selfish, Evelyn," my father said. "Lucas has the charisma to make investors listen. Maybe this is how your ideas finally get used. Shouldn't you be proud?" The room blurred with tears. "Proud?" I whispered. "You want me to applaud while he erases me?" Neither of them answered. Their silence screamed louder than any words. Later that night, I found the confirmation myself. A press release splashed across a tech news site. Lucas Carter, founder of MedAI, announces strategic partnership with Easton Ventures. My heart plummeted. The photo showed him shaking hands with a smiling investor beneath bold letters that could have been mine. "Innovating AI for the future of healthcare." Founder. Not collaborator. Not partner. Founder. The word branded itself across my vision. He hadn't just stolen my work. He had stolen my identity. I collapsed onto the floor of my apartment, my laptop still glowing beside me. The air felt thick, too heavy to breathe. Betrayal was no longer an abstract ache. It was a physical wound slicing through every part of me. Days blurred together after that. I stopped showing up at the lab. My colleagues' messages piled up, unanswered. The outside world dimmed. I silenced my phone, drew the curtains, and let the weight of failure press me into the mattress. Nights stretched endlessly, punctuated by the scratching of my pen across the pages of a journal. "If I disappeared tomorrow," I wrote one night, "would anyone notice? Would the world pause? Or would life simply continue without me?" Tears stained the paper, smudging the ink. I closed the book, clutching it against my chest like a lifeline, though it only reminded me of how alone I had become. The voices in my head grew crueler. Maybe they're right. Maybe Lucas deserves it more. Maybe I am nothing but a dreamer with no weight in the real world. Sometimes I wandered my apartment like a ghost, staring at the half-finished code on my screen, lines of logic that once felt like a map to salvation. Now they looked meaningless, the work of a child scribbling on walls no one would ever see. But in the stillness, memories crept back. One night, I opened an old box and found a faded photograph. Me, at 12 years old, my hair tied in a messy ponytail, sitting at the kitchen table. My mother leaned over my shoulder, guiding my small hands as I typed the first lines of code on our clunky old desktop. Her smile in that moment had been pure, proud, untainted. I traced the edges of the photo with trembling fingers. My voice broke into the emptiness. Have they forgotten? Have they forgotten I was once their pride? The silence offered no answer. I pressed the photograph to my heart, tears sliding down my cheeks. In that fragile moment, I wasn't a scientist, or a fighter, or even a daughter wronged. I was just a woman yearning for the simplest thing: a mother's embrace, a father's belief, a brother's respect. Instead, I had nothing but shadows, and as the night deepened, I wondered if the girl in the photo had ever truly existed, or if she, too, had been erased by the weight of their indifference. The morning after another sleepless night, I sat staring at the glowing screen of my laptop. My inbox overflowed with messages I had been too afraid to open, but one subject line caught my attention. Investor notes. Draft proposal. The sender was Lucas. My heart pounded. He must have copied me by accident. I clicked. What I saw made my stomach twist. It was my work, my algorithms, my diagrams, but woven clumsily into his pitch. And then something leaped out at me. A flaw. A line of code misrepresented, a calculation inverted. No one else would see it, but to me, it screamed like a beacon. If investors used this, the model would collapse in real-world application. For the first time in months, anger surged, not as despair, but as power. They can't take everything from me. Not this, not the heart of my work. I whispered to myself, the words hardening into steel. No, they cannot erase me. With trembling hands that steadied as I typed, I opened a new browser tab. Forms, applications, government portals. Hours later, with the sun setting behind my blinds, I hit submit. Phoenix AI Incorporated. The name flared on the confirmation screen like a torch in the darkness. A company born from the ashes they had left me in. That night, for the first time in months, I slept without nightmares. Days later, Daniel Hayes, the mentor who had first warned me, sat across from me at a small cafe. His presence was calm, grounding, as though he saw a version of me I had forgotten. You don't need them, Evelyn. Build your own. Gather people who see you, not the shadow of your brother. I swallowed hard. People like who? People who've been overlooked. People with fire in their chests but no stage to prove it. And so I began. Piece by piece, I gathered a small team. A young programmer dismissed as too idealistic. A designer told she was too emotional for tech. A data scientist forced out of a firm for not playing politics. They became my family by choice, not blood. Together, we built late into the nights, fueled by ramen and hope, our laughter ringing truer than anything I had heard at my parents' table. Between coding sessions, I researched laws, intellectual property filings, contracts. I collected evidence of Lucas's theft, identical models, verbatim slides, forged signatures. Every discovery tightened the case I was building against him. The bitterness in my veins transformed into resolve. One night, as we gathered around the cramped table in my apartment-turned-office, I looked at the faces glowing in the light of their screens. Exhaustion etched lines under their eyes, but their smiles were unshaken. They believed in me. Not as a daughter, not as a sister, but as a leader. I felt something break open inside me. Tears blurred my vision, hot and relentless. "What's wrong?" one of them asked. I covered my face with my hands, sobbing softly. "It's nothing. No one has ever believed in me like this." A silence followed, gentle and reverent. Then someone placed a hand on mine. "We do. We're here, and we're not leaving." That night, I wrote in my journal not of despair, but of gratitude. Maybe family isn't the people who raise you. Maybe it's the ones who refuse to let you fall. Weeks later, as Phoenix AI reached its first milestone, my inbox chimed again. The subject line was simple: confidential investment proposal. My pulse quickened. The offer came from an anonymous investor, their terms staggering, 7 figures to back our fledgling company. I read it twice, 3 times, heart thundering. This wasn't a handout, this was recognition, proof that our dream was no longer invisible. But questions clawed at me. Who was this shadow benefactor? Why would they take such a risk? The email ended with only one line. "I believe in you, Evelyn." The screen glowed in the dim room as I leaned back, breathless. For the first time, the darkness that had swallowed me for so long felt like it was lifting, replaced by the faint light of something I had almost forgotten. Hope. The invitation came as a surprise. My parents insisted on a family dinner, a chance, they said, to set things straight. I should have ignored it, but some part of me wanted closure. I walked into the dining room that evening with the weight of years pressing on my shoulders. The chandeliers glittered as they always had, casting golden light on polished silver. Lucas was already seated, smug in his tailored suit, while my parents waited with solemn faces. My father cleared his throat once the first course was served. "Evelyn, we've discussed this. Your choices, your rebellion. It cannot continue. We're cutting you off. Completely this time. No money, no family connections. From this day forward, you're on your own." My mother added, softer but just as final. "We do this for your own good. Lucas is the one carrying the Carter legacy now." The words stung less than I expected. Perhaps because I had already been living without them. Perhaps because I had learned to breathe on my own. I placed my napkin on the table calmly, ready to respond, when my phone buzzed. I almost silenced it, but something urged me to answer. "Ms. Carter?" a voice said, crisp and triumphant. "Congratulations. Phoenix AI has just gone public. Valuation, $220 million. For a moment, the world froze. My hand trembled slightly as I lowered the phone. The room was silent except for the faint hum of the chandelier. Then, with a sharp clink, Lucas dropped his glass, red wine spilling across the pristine tablecloth like blood. Their faces told the story: shock, disbelief, fear. My parents' eyes darted to each other, then to me, searching for a lifeline. My father's voice cracked for the first time I could remember. "Evelyn, this doesn't change the fact that you're still our daughter. You won't turn your back on us, will you?" My mother's lips quivered. "Please, Evelyn, you won't abandon family." I leaned back, my heartbeat steady. The years of their scorn, the laughter, the betrayal, it all crystallized into clarity. "Family?" I said softly. "Tell me, when was I ever truly yours? You left me long before I left you." Lucas shifted uncomfortably, his usual arrogance faltering. He muttered, "You'll regret this. Investors don't stay loyal forever." But the world outside had already begun unraveling his lies. News outlets buzzed with reports of fraud, leaked documents, forged proposals, the evidence I had gathered now in the hands of lawyers. My parents' names surfaced too, whispers of their complicity in covering for him. The legacy they cherished was cracking like glass underfoot. I rose from my chair, the silence stretching. "I don't owe you anything anymore. Not loyalty, not forgiveness. Nothing." Lucas lunged as if to protest, but my father's hand shot out, silencing him. For once, he had no defense. Then came the twist I hadn't expected. Later that night, as I sifted through congratulatory messages, another email arrived. The anonymous investor revealed their identity: Claire Whitman, my childhood friend. Years ago, when bullies cornered her in the schoolyard, I had stood by her, bruised my knuckles defending her when no one else would. We lost touch as life pulled us apart. But she remembered. "I always knew you'd build something extraordinary," she wrote. "This was my chance to give back." Tears welled in my eyes. My triumph was no longer just survival. It was the echo of kindness returned across decades. After the dinner, I stepped into the cool night air. The city pulsed around me, alive and electric. I walked aimlessly, the heels of my shoes clicking against the pavement, the breeze tangling through my hair. For the first time in years, my chest felt light. I paused beneath the streetlights, lifting my face to the sky. No voices mocked me here. No eyes judged me. Just the quiet freedom of belonging to myself. The golden cage was behind me. Ahead stretched a horizon unbound. The fallout came swiftly, like a storm no one could outrun. Within weeks, headlines screamed of Lucas's fraud. Investors pulled out, contracts dissolved, and government investigators began combing through his accounts. Photographs of him, once hailed as a rising star, now accompanied articles dripping with condemnation. The man who had built his identity on charm and deception stood exposed, stripped bare before the world. My parents, too, were caught in the undertow. Their attempts to shield him, the silent complicity, became evidence of their own undoing. Invitations to social galas disappeared. Old friends stopped returning calls. The Carter name, once polished like silver, now rusted in public view. I should have felt satisfaction, but instead there was a quiet ache. I had wanted justice, not ruin, yet the truth demanded consequences, and this was the harvest of their choices. Cousins, uncles, distant relatives who had once whispered doubts about me now turned their gaze differently. One by one, messages arrived. "We didn't know. We see you now. We're proud of you, Evelyn." Words too late to heal, but still they carried a strange weight. I wasn't invisible anymore. Then came the invitation, a formal letter embossed with gold. "You are cordially invited to speak at the NASDAQ opening bell ceremony, honoring Phoenix AI's historic IPO." I held the paper in my hands, my heart thudding. The very stage where legends stood was now open to me. I accepted, though a tremor of disbelief lingered in my chest. On the morning of the ceremony, the city rose beneath a pale dawn. I stood backstage, nerves dancing in my veins as the murmur of the crowd drifted from beyond the curtains. Screens flashed with my company's name, the logo of the Phoenix rising against a sky of blue. My team huddled nearby, their faces glowing with pride. When my name was announced, the applause surged like a tide. I stepped forward into the blaze of lights, the NASDAQ tower looming above me, its massive screen projecting my image across Times Square. The weight of the moment nearly stole my breath. I gripped the podium, looking out at a sea of expectant faces, investors, journalists, strangers who had come to witness history. For a heartbeat, I thought of my parents' table, of laughter that cut deeper than knives, of nights spent alone questioning whether I mattered at all. "Family can abandon you," I began, my voice steady though my hands trembled. "They can dismiss your dreams, laugh at your pain, even erase your name, but they cannot decide your worth. Only you can do that." A hush fell over the crowd, the kind that carries weight. I saw nods, glistening eyes, people leaning closer as if afraid to miss a single word. I stand here not because I was carried, but because I refused to stop walking. I built Phoenix AI from ashes, but those ashes were not wasted. They were proof that even what is destroyed can rise again, stronger, brighter. The applause thundered, but I lifted my hand gently, continuing. "To anyone who has been told they are not enough, who has been silenced, dismissed, or betrayed, your story isn't over. You have the power to define yourself. No one can take that from you." In that moment, the stage dissolved. It wasn't just about me anymore. It was about everyone who had been underestimated, everyone who had carried scars invisible to the world. The bell rang, marking the opening of the market, its sharp peal echoing against the towers. Confetti burst into the air, swirling like sparks from a fire newly lit. My team cheered, hugging one another, their joy radiant. I turned toward the cameras, my throat tightening. A tear slipped down my cheek, hot and undeniable, but a smile broke through, wide and unshaken. The cameras captured it all, not a warrior carved from stone, but a woman scarred, healed, and still standing. As the crowd roared and the screens blazed, I felt the truth settle deep within me. I was no longer defined by rejection. I was no longer a shadow at a family table. I was Evelyn Carter, and I was free.